a little bit on those. On this one here, I kind of did the same. Here I had to be a little bit more playful. The great thing, for instance, the great thing about, let's start with this one here first. So here it's the same room. The only thing I did, in Archicad, I created like a view where I hide these walls that were covering the room, and I was able to get the camera out, and then I was able to shoot the camera and then have that room. I don't know if I have that, but you know, kind of, it didn't do the cuts. I mean, it did the cut here and here, but it was a wide model, so I had to Photoshop the other black walls. But other than that, it worked great, right? Like, it's, you know, maybe I could have extended the cut a little farther away so I could actually get the skylight here. Again, just at that point, I also wanted to get the door handle. I didn't want to cut it too much because then you kind of start cutting the window here. So it was a little tricky section cut. It was a little tricky because once you kind of hide those elements, the mirror starts reflecting what's going on farther away. So honestly, there was a door that should have been gotten here, and I just didn't have time to work on it because my friend told me that he wanted to kind of just work on this for himself. So at that point, I just didn't have time to adjust it anymore. But generally speaking, I would have just create another rendering with that wall in there and then just Photoshop it in here. But other than that, these ones I kind of created these in D5. And then a great thing that I found was that once you kind of have a rendering in D5, it will really help me a lot to let's see. It will really help me a lot if I could come here and, for instance, here, and then do the AI style transfer and then do a realistic. It really helps a lot. Like, it adds these elements of photorealism. Like, it gives it a pass where it will create like the towels and everything will look a little bit more realistic. The metals will look a little bit more realistic. Everything will look a little bit more realistic when you enhance it. So that's why I really like the D5 renderer more than, for instance, these ones here. You see how enhanced this? Like, they actually look photorealistic. Even though they are not as sharp, that's the bad thing, you lose sharpness. But you see how it creates these materials? Like, it actually enhances them to where they actually get that fuzziness, right? Whereas if you get them directly from the renderer, they look fine, but they still look a little bit animated. But when you give that pass of the in-painting, it does that extra texture to give it just that extra level of realism. Also, another cool thing that I found was that, for instance, for this specific item here, I was able to come to the 3D objects here, and you can go to model, I believe it is. Where did it go? Okay, now that I'm here, it actually, I cannot see it now anymore. Maybe I'm covering it here. Well, there is a section where you can, oh, here it is. You can actually create a 3D item. So for instance, if I come here and say, I don't want to use it because I already have used my 5 points, but if I put surfboard, it will actually create the surfboard, but it comes very pixelated. Then you can refine it, but you can tell that it's not perfect, right? It's more like an item. Like, if you want to have a very close item, it's not great, but if you want to have an item that is in the background and you don't know where to get it, you can always create that 3D model and you can refine it, and it will enhance it a little bit better. And once you do the in-painting, it will even clean it a little bit more. It's still not perfect, you can tell, right? Like, you can tell, like, there is some mistakes here and there, but other than that, like, you know, the materials are sharper. Then you see how these guys sharper. These looks actually real. Actually realizing there's little artifacts there. That's the bad thing when you do the in-paints. You have to be very careful on that. But in general, that's pretty much it. You do the post-production in Photoshop. There's not a lot to do in Photoshop, to be honest, because I did a lot of the model already. So in Photoshop is mostly just adding filters, maybe hiding here and there little things that you didn't want to, you know, show. I think that one guys look pretty cool. But that's pretty much the process. I will say, it really, if I had to give you some tips or recommendations, I would say really put a lot of emphasis to the model, because the model is what's gonna dictate how it's gonna look later. and how much realism people are gonna bite it. Like, I really, how good it's gonna sell it. Because if you think that you can just model only, and believe me, don't get me wrong, like I like to model stuff for architecture, but I'm not like 100% an artist artist, in the sense like I'm not in love with modeling little details like the little hardwares and stuff like that. But I have learned to understand how important these little items are, and to a point where like I actually try to like not having to model those by trying to get those from libraries. And it could be the way, if you find a great library, just try to use those. But the important thing is to really get the model right. The second important thing is to get the lighting right. I would say third and fourth is really, if not the second too, I would say the second is to get the lighting right and the aspect ratio right. I know that here I did the aspect ratio at step 4, but really you want to get the aspect ratio done along with the white model in the lighting. Sometimes you're not gonna get it, in the sense like, because the design and things are changing. Later on you realize like, oh, maybe it was better to do these other things. So I get it that you're not always gonna get it 100% right, but trying to get the lighting and the aspect ratio on that second step, that's very important. Step number 3 is kind of get the materials right, as far as high quality materials, kind of making sure the materials are actually reflecting the way they should be reflecting, along with the lighting and with the reflections and things like that. And then number 4, I will say just kind of how everything is interacting as a whole. What do the client think could be incorporated? Not as far as he giving you orders, but as far as making sure your client's happy. I think a lot of people just do things that they want to do without having the input for the client or for the person we're servicing. And I think it's always good to keep that person in conversation, just to make sure that at the end of the day, it's their project. You are there to really help them with the images and presentation of things, but at the end of the day, the best thing you can have is your word of mouth, so they can bring you more clients. So you really want to make sure like they are happy with what they get. And a lot of that is just having these conversations to make sure that, you know, if for instance, if I gave them this and he never said like, well, I kind of honestly don't like the gold, the brass here, I actually wanted silver. Well, that's something that maybe I missed, right? Like maybe I just never gave the client that communication of like, hey, should we do this thing or that, or I kind of finalized it and he realized like, hey, I want everything a different color now, right? So it's good to kind of have a lot of conversation with the client within these 3 steps here, because by the time you get here, you want to make sure that everything is nailed with the material and the lighting and the views. So by the time you get here, there's no surprises as far as the client telling you that he doesn't like something, as far as the whole like big major items, as far as like a 3D item or a whole material. Yeah, that's pretty much my workflow of what I did for this specific project, and I hope you guys like it, and I'll see you in the next one.